I mean, everyone burns out. Everybody that I know has burnt out on some aspect of the craft of it. The thought of going back to not being autonomous again and working for someone to, watching a clock is a terrifying thought for me now. I think awards are kind of pointless. I think that what they create is scarcity in an artist's mind that they don't have something and they don't need it.
In this episode, I had the chance to sit down with Patrick Jones. He's an award-winning fine artist and illustrator known for his Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta-styled illustrations. In this episode, we talk about his journey going from student to professional and how he's been able to keep that enthusiasm for art for his entire career, talking about how he really just tries to focus on the things that he really cares about versus the things that he thinks will be the most efficient career-wise. We also talk a little bit about his experience with burnout and any tips that he would give to any aspiring students for overcoming those feelings. By the way, if you'd like to support me, please consider checking out the links to the courses below. All of your support really does help me make more content like this. And by the way, please like and subscribe. That really does help with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
And the way I start these things is the point of this is not to talk about how to become an artist, how to become better, or any of that kind of stuff. It's more about the why of doing it.
Are we recording now, Christian?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Excellent.
The content creation. You have to record everything. Yeah, for anyone, I'm in Australia, in Brisbane right now, Patrick's house, in the studio, and we're recording a podcast right now.
Excellent.
Well, and in general, I talk to people a lot of the time about draftsmanship, and I think there's an impulse online to try to go all in on skill building and all that kind of stuff. And I think that to me is not as sustainable of a career or a life as, finding some intuitive way that you can see yourself doing it or like for 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
And I guess, for every person I've talked to, it's been way more about like learning to trust yourself, and the difficult part being way more about the like spiritual side. Yeah. Trusting yourself, having intuition versus the pure technical draftsman stuff.
Yeah. Well, the technical stuff gives you the confidence to do that. But you're right. Yeah. After a while, I mean, everyone burns out. Everybody that I know has burnt out on some aspect of the craft of it. And it's usually because they don't like the work itself. So I think commissioned work burns a lot of people out. And like we were talking the other day, the thought of going back to not being autonomous again and working for someone to, watching a clock is a terrifying thought for me now, Terror being relevant, of course. I'm not terrified, but I would really not look forward to having to do that again after having experienced the freedom of self-creation, Doesn't mean I replicate myself, but, the act of being totally in charge of what you're going to do next. Like I'm looking at the screen now at a drawing I did last week there. After a hiatus of about 6 months, we were talking about it, Christian, about taking so much time off. But because of the mileage of all those years, by the end of that day, I drew that drawing in about 10 minutes and thought, I haven't lost a thing. It's all still in there in the subconscious. So yeah, you're right. The technical stuff, it's really important. I mean, we can't undervalue it. It's really important. But what I see as well is the eternal student.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm an eternal student where I always want to learn stuff, but I mean the eternal student that won't leave college,
right?
Where they never think they're ready for the actual work itself, for the industry, say. Let's say they're going to work at Pixar or something. They never feel they're ready, and they never will be with that attitude.
Yeah.
So I think you're ready the second you have enough skill to present a picture that was in your imagination and it fitted that view. And I think you're ready to go then. And then you'll learn on the job.
Yeah.
And you can continue the technical stuff in the background.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the strange thing about, being an artist and drawing and painting is that young people, or I guess anyone that's a beginner artist, they look at their heroes, they're people that have been doing it for 60 years or, old masters, anybody that they might really admire. And they see that as the standard. They look at Kim Jong-gi or John Singer Sargent and it's like, oh, that's what I have to be in order, before I can even start saying anything, And I think a common problem that people face is trying to become a master as a student before even like putting their name out there creatively as an artist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Because if you can see, look at the books I have on the shelf there. You can't see them. Maybe we'll have photographs of this later. Christian, slowly now. But you can see in there, you got Shelley, you got the Masters of American Illustration, you got some of my books there, you got The Spirit, Will Eisner. But you know that, I mean, I've filled these shelves and I'm starting to run out of artists.
Yeah.
So how many great artists were there? They're very unusual.
Yeah.
You know, they're the anomaly, really. And then there's millions of other artists. And there's nothing wrong with being the other artist. You know, you've got, like, these artists mostly forgotten. Kenneth down there, for instance. There's a book that they're called Men's Adventures.
Yeah.
Every single artist in that is superb, but you won't know any of them. I didn't know any of them. Just went and look at all those guys. Maybe Norman Saunders, I knew. But you got John Buscema there. You've even got, there's an Australian artist there called Streeton. I never heard of him till I came to Australia, and he's astonishing.
Yeah.
Right? So there are very few of them. I have to dig them out. So that tells you once again that nobody's expecting Shelley to walk in the door.
Yeah.
That would be ridiculous. And so I learned a long time ago, if you're easy to work with and you can do the job competently, you get in hired.
Yeah.
And then who knows what you become after that. But if you don't leave college and do it, you're never going to be that person. You're always going to be, there was it said, playing the piano in the cupboard. I think it was Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
You know, you play the piano in the cupboard, you're fantastic, but nobody will ever know.
Yeah.
You won't come out of that cupboard. So yeah, you've got to come out. The main work is, you know, let's say you go to college for 4 years. Look how much life you've got left.
Yeah.
You can't keep staying in that zone. Nobody else did. I don't think Jack Kirby even went to college.
Yeah.
And
I dropped out of college.
you dropped out of college, and it's very common for that as well. I mean, I have a model, Tora Highlands, and she's a director, an actor. I mean, she's just absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
And she dropped out of college. But here's the rub. She then had to work in coffee bars and stuff, and that's fine. You know, there's nothing to be ashamed of with a day's work. But she could have just hung on for those last 4 months in college, for instance, and maybe taught in university as the job she would do between gigs,
Yeah.
rather than working a barista or something like that. So it is the actual certificate itself that you've been to university. It's actually it's one of those keys to open another door. And if you don't have it, somebody lesser than you can walk through that door. I mean, didn't Marshall say that he couldn't teach at college because he doesn't have that degree?
Well, yeah, him and Jeff Watts and
Jeff
Stan
Watts.
can't teach at
Can
university
you believe that?
because none of them have degrees and stuff.
Can you believe that? Imagine the idiocy. Jeff Watts will come to your college and teach, but we can't take him because of paperwork.
Right.
And so we're just going to use the student who's just graduated to teach that class that Jeff Watts could have taught. I mean, that's just outrageously stupid, isn't it?
You know, in general, I think there's an impulse to like be overqualified or to wait, you know, until you have all the degrees and all that kind of stuff, because stuff like that does truly happen. You know,
Yeah.
It's like your resume isn't filled out enough. You haven't worked on enough TV shows. You haven't done enough illustrations.
That's true. Like, comes out too.
Well, and I think at a certain point, it's like I understand the fear and waiting to put yourself out there because there are consequences to be, you know,
Oh, for sure.
putting yourself out too early.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the consequences I just mentioned there, that you'll the minute you have a degree in your hand, your pay scale goes up. It's as simple as that. You've got a higher pay scale. People look at the degree and they go, well, you have to pay more for this person than another person. And there's no doubt about that. It's just, I think with some universities, their mind are too closed on red tape, you know?
Yeah.
There has to be room to maneuver at least a percentage of people that you can bring in, like Jeff Watts, for instance. I mean, if I knew Jeff Watts was teaching in the university down the street there, I'd go and enroll.
Yeah.
And I don't need to.
Yeah.
But I'd do it to go and watch Jeff Watts.
In a heartbeat, right?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I remember you invited me to Jeff Watts' studio.
Yeah.
I was tripping over myself. I was talking to the taxi driver.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet Jeff Watts today.
Yeah.
I said that to him. Doesn't know who Jeff Watts
He
is.
has no idea.
So I told her. I says, there he is there. I'm in the car park and Jeff's getting out of the car. And I went, oh God, what a coincidence. Jeff's getting out of the car as I'm getting out of the car.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to sneak in and hide at the back. And I get out of the car and there's Jeff. And the taxi driver, he got the idea. He went, go and talk to him. You know, because I had 20 minutes to get to know this taxi driver, and we became friends by the end of the ride. He was a real nice guy. He says, go talk to him. I says, I'd rather wait here for a bit,
Yeah.
you know, until he goes in, and I'll go. He says, no, do it. There's a taxi driver with more agency than me. And I says, okay, I'll do it. And I get out of the car, and I still try to get past Jeff. And he says, hey, you know, he said hello. I says, hi, Jeff, how you doing? He says, good to see you. And I couldn't work on in that moment. Was he just saying good to see you? because you're just someone coming to class? Yeah. Or is he saying, good to see you, Patrick? Yeah. Without saying the word.
I'm pretty sure him and all those people at the school, they know who you are and they admire your work, you know? And I think as an individual, like we look at people that are perceived to be above us, you know, these art heroes that we have as being inaccessible or above us in some way. But I think in a lot of ways, people are just people, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, going back to we look at our heroes like Kim Jong-gi or Carl Copen, or like any artist that has a bunch of followers or whatever. They're just a human being on the planet in the same way that we are, you know?
Yeah.
And I think part of art is learning to trust who you are and valuing your own voice as much as, you know, some great master or something.
No, I was just laughing there, Christian, because said we're just human. No. And you remember yesterday, both of us fell in the mud.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to get down to the river because we've only got legs and feet like everybody else.
I'll put the footage of you falling in the mud because we only have...
put it in. Yeah. Put it in with some funny music too.
Yeah.
But I did the loop, something like that. But we didn't get you falling in.
No, we didn't.
With better still.
Yeah, it was much worse. Yeah. But yeah, with all this stuff, I think it's like, as you get older and, you know, all this stuff, the hard part is not the skills, it's not the painting, it's that feeling of, you know, doubt or any of that kind of stuff. To me, at least, it seems like that.
It's forever. Yeah. It's forever the doubt. And part of it is that you admire other artists and you don't want to let them down. You don't want to let yourself down to begin with, but you're always comparing. And I think that's the one thing. Once you learn all the skills, what you have to do now is kill the ego. And so the ego is always saying, I'm not as good as. And you don't have to be. It doesn't matter. For me now, the peace I'm finding is that I'm really enjoying the process. Yeah. And so it's come to me over a long period of time that I was able to have this long career because I always enjoyed the process. Even though I had doubt and I wanted to be better than this next artist, and that gradually fell away because I didn't care whether I was better than the next artist because I was enjoying the process. So to me, I think the big learning experience that has kept me whole throughout this is that I always did. I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when I was a kid, and then I didn't enjoy it when I was in advertising because it became really rigor. That's what it was. It was 9 o'clock, this job has to be done by 3, you know? From 9 to 3, my life was just pointless. You know, I didn't enjoy the process.
Well, you still had an art job, right?
That's the thing. And then after that, I had to sit down and go, which I did. I always had an internal conversation with myself. I said, how dare you think that was a waste when you've used to work on a building site in the mud and rain, and people still do that and you don't. So, you know, dry your eyes and realize how really truly lucky you are.
Well, yeah, I think part of the human condition is looking at your situation, no matter how great it is, and being like, oh man, I wish I had more money, or I wish I had a better job. And, you know, I meet students all the time who are like, if only I could just get an art job, you know, if only I can get out of the coffee shop, then I would be happy, you know? And there are people at those art jobs who are like, if only I could hang out with my dog, you know, or
that's right.
Only if I can hang out with my cat all day. You know?
And people say it, don't they? When they get really right up there to the top where you think it's the best, you know, they say, I wish I had spent more time with my family.
Yeah.
You know, they just say it. And it's like, you know, it was the Steven Spielberg thing. He said, look at those guys grabbing that Oscar and saying, you know, I want to thank all these people. How many hours did they sacrifice their family for?
Years, right?
Yeah, for that little gold thing that will probably just gather dust after a while.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll keep it on the mantelpiece forever. But I was in Donato Giancola's studio, and he has won so many Hugo Awards. And I remember thinking, I'd love to win a Hugo Award. And I was in his studio, and I saw behind a whole bunch of paintings, like 6 Hugo Awards. One was a doorstop or something. The other one was just falling over, and they were covered in dust, you know? So once upon a time, I mean, surely at the very first time he won that Hugo, he must have went, wow, polished it.
That's great.
Put it on this mantle, looked at it, you know, showed his friends, talked about it, got another one.
Yeah.
Then eventually, where do I put these things? You know, my dad was a champion dart player. And I remember he had cups everywhere, and they were really big, you know? And I'd end up with my Lego in them. Put my Lego in, I'll take the top off, and, you know, they just became utensils for something else. Because after a while, I think the first glory is the only glory. After that is it's just another cup, you know? And it really is just a piece of tin. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point, actually, Christian, that most people don't talk about. Because we were saying, what will we talk about, right?
Yeah.
I think And I know that the world might just go, oh, this means so much to me. I think awards are kind of pointless.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that what they create is scarcity in an artist's mind that they don't have something and they don't need it. They don't need it. And so everyone's scratching and clawing and possibly getting resentful toward another artist because they maybe won an award they wanted to win. And I judged a competition recently, and some of my students entered it. And it was great. I was really happy to see all the art around the walls and everything. And there was only one winner. And there was 3, second, third, and honorary or something like that. So 4 people in that room were over the moon happy.
Yeah.
But I would even think that the ones that won second, third, fourth, and honorary were probably a little resentful of the person that won the first.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But let's just say I bet somewhere in their subconscious, nice as everyone was, they went, oh, wow, I thought I was going to win but I got the second.
Right.
But I got the second, as if that's not good enough. And at the end of that, I looked around the room and all I saw was, and maybe it was because I was the judge, was these people that they were all a lot of them were my friends and students and stuff, are a little bit upset that they didn't win. And I am the person to look to for that reason. Because there's always a reason you're going to, why didn't I win?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't think that I was as good as the other person. Yeah. So it comes back to me. He didn't think. And at the end of that, I went, I'm never going to judge anything ever again. Because just think of the word judge, It's so pompous, isn't it?
Sure.
So I thought, I'm never going to judge another competition again, and I'm never going to enter one. That's where I'm at. So I used to enter Spectrum and all of those competitions. And I entered IBN, won that one in the first year, and got we were talking about it the other day, got the cover of the book. It was a big Conan cover. And it was really wonderful, and I went, wow, first prize. I didn't even know it was in the competition, because you just enter it to get in the book. And that's what I thought it was. Spectrum, you just enter to get in the book. Right? You might win a gold award. I don't know if they give you an actual award or anything. This was a big cash prize. And I remember winning and go, wow, this is fantastic. And then after that, I started entering competitions and didn't win. And I went, and suddenly my life was about winning competitions. And then I woke up and I went, this is mad. This is because there was so much disappointment all the time. And I thought, no. And I just drew a line and went, look, I'm not entering competitions again.
No.
If I ever do, it's for fun only. And when students say I want to enter a competition, I say, well, make sure it's just for fun. Don't even consider winning it, because it's just not what you think it is. It's horrific, really. Actually, it's all of a sudden, you're not doing it for the love of process. You're doing it for the love of winning something that you will 99.9% certainly won't win.
Well, and in every single field, there is that arbitrary hierarchy of, winners, losers, first place, second place, whatever, whether it be movies or video games or poetry or dancing or whatever. There's that impulse to try to be better or to be at the top of the field, which I understand.
Yeah, I understand that part of it.
Yeah, to feel accredited and validated. And I think it's totally valid to want external validation, but the danger of that is that you start to crave it. You start to, well, in some ways, like, when people start getting famous, they start to look at they look down on other people.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that debacle at the Oscars with Will Smith.
Yeah, right.
When he won that Oscar, I was just staring in disgust at him on the screen while he was holding that Oscar. And he was crying like a baby, and I thought, do you not realize what you've just done in pursuit of this ridiculous thing? It just ruined his whole career, ruined everybody's night, and ruined the world of entertainment in one fell swoop.
People still talk about it. And I admire Will Smith. I think
I did too, until that point.
Well, I like he's put out things after that. I'm like, oh, that was funny that he did that. Like he has some funny TikToks or Instagrams. But I think that like the that thing is more of like a spirit or something that just like it haunts you, or it tricks your brain into thinking that like I am justified in slapping another person over the face on national TV, or I'm justified in, giving up my time to try to do these amazing paintings so I don't spend time with my family or whatever, right? To me, those awards mean a lot more when the person didn't have to sacrifice much. They were just being themselves, versus compromising their identity, who they are, to get that award.
Yeah. It's funny where the conversation went there, isn't it? And, we were talking about it the other day. It's a strange world because I always disliked the bully. And everyone, to some degree, gets bullied in school, even the bullies. And that's probably what makes them bullies. Well, certainly psychologically it does. They were bullied by their father or something. But I never liked the bully. And I think that's where I really resented that night. That I knew Chris Rock was bullied as a child. Yeah. And there he is, bullied in front of the entire world by a man much bigger than him. So I really resented that idea. But it was because of the whole tension. I felt sorry for Will Smith after it. Yeah. As a human being. I went, imagine what it must be like to be him now.
Yeah, yeah.
It must be he must be every morning going, I'm Will Smith.
Oh, yeah, I messed up. Yeah.
Instead of, I'm Will Smith, he's going, I'm Will Smith. Yeah. And so I think if the Oscars didn't exist, right, and all awards didn't exist, I think we'd be happier people. I think we'd be making better stuff. Yeah. Because there's also the award for technical achievement and all that. I mean, I can see the point of it because it makes you try harder.
Well, I would disagree, honestly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, to me, it seems like that thing is part of the human condition. That's just part of being human, is to desire stuff and to desire hierarchies and all that kind of like everything, like whether it be Star Wars or, Lord of the Rings or whatever, there's a fair amount of that happening. And I think it's bad and it leads to being anxious, but also leads to these great works of art.
It does, yeah.
And for every, great artist, there's a dark background like Norman Rockwell or whoever else. Yeah. That can, you could very easily criticize these people for giving everything to art, but their work is amazing, Their
work's amazing. They left that for us. Yeah. Yeah. But there's talk, like, let's say Norman Rockwell. I think there's something darker that I don't know about Norman Rockwell, but just let's say, for instance, the darkest thing about Norman Rockwell is as far as I know, he only went on holiday once to Edinburgh in Scotland. And apart from that, he worked every day and Christmas afternoon. I mean, that's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've heard he drank a lot and stuff. I don't know a lot about him, but I mean, I think, the common critique is that he's painting these idyllic American families when his home life was all work and drinking. And
a David Lynch movie there already made, isn't it? Right, yeah. He was to make it, The Dark Side of Norman Rockwell. Yeah.
Well, with all this stuff, there's this impulse to, swear off. I think being an artist is almost embracing those feelings to a degree. It's like you're not just this egoless, emotionless thing that can just create and not want followers and likes and money and all that kind of stuff. I think it's totally natural. I think it's trying to integrate those things, like integrate those things in a healthy way versus either denying it completely or going all into it,
Yeah, it's amazing, really, how the world's... I mean, I've seen the world change a few times. But this new change, where business used to be, like, for instance, once upon a time, you might think things are hard now, but imagine a time when you just walked out into the street and you looked at the sky and you went, okay, what next, right? Yeah. There was no internet. Yeah. And you had to go and get a paper book called the Artist and Writer's Yearbook, and you had to look through it and find addresses and send letters to people with a picture of your artwork to see if you can get out, and then wait 2 weeks to see if anyone replied. And it would go on a slush pile. It's called a slush pile. It was just paper letters that weren't solicited. So basically, you hadn't talked to anyone in the company before, and the letter usually said to the editor. That goes straight on the slush pile. Right. And if they had a slow day, they might pick some of those up for fun and have a look inside. So that's where all my letters went, on the slush pile. So imagine that. Imagine the despair of that. And if you finally, maybe someone pulled you out of the slush pile, which happened to me actually, finally pulled you out of there, had a look at your work and went, this guy's pretty good, and give you a phone call, and now your career started. And it's a shock. And all of a sudden the whole world turns. And you go, I'm now a professional artist. And I can't believe it happened. Yeah. From having the chutzpah, some new word I was trying to find yesterday, to send something out and see what happens, see if it sticks, and it did. But then once you get there, it's like, take the internet out of the equation and just imagine now that the internet then is an annual art book, which is what it was. And so an annual art book, in America, I put some work in the American one and in the English one, and it costs $1,000 a page, £1,000 a page. So I think it's usually $2,000. Okay, so you double the English money. So imagine you had to find $2,000 and you're only 20 years old. Right? And you've got to find $2,000 to get a page in that book. And now you're in the top tier and you've got to wait and see if anyone turns that page. What if the two pages stick together?
Right.
You know, there's the kind of things you're thinking in your head. What if those pages stick together? Because I remember when they used to review books and they would flip through the pages and all seemed to my pages to stuck together. I was like, what the hell?
What the heck?
That was my page they just missed there. Or maybe they're reviewing one of my books and they missed the best drawing. Like, oh, that was the best drawing was on that page. So you're at the will of these art directors.
Arbitrary, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then you're at the will of, that's nice. Will I make the effort to reach over for that phone and call this artist? And what's your name? You know, I created a company called Aardvark because it was AA. And I knew that it would be in the first pages of the book. So you had to start thinking like that.
Yeah, right.
And then you realized somebody else was called Aardvark.
No.
Three A's, you know? So everyone's trying to get 2 A's and now the whole front of the book is just A's like that. And if you're called Zelensky, you're finished.
Yeah.
You know, because nobody's getting to the end of that book. But then you might start thinking, well, what if they start from the back?
Yeah.
They keep it fresh.
Right.
So now if you're J. Jones, you're done. You know?
Right.
So all of that's going through your head. And I honestly would say let's say I was in that book for 10 years. So there's 10 years multiplied by 2. Look at all that money. What, 20 grand? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I have no way of finding out if anyone ever used that book to get me work or whether I just got work from mailing out mail-outs or my agent met someone. You know, I have no idea whether that ever paid off. And I think it didn't.
Yeah.
Because then Spectrum came along and it was a much cheaper alternative.
Yeah.
So you just $50 an image or something like that. But you're at the will of, you may not get in the book, even if you pay the $50, because it's juried.
Yeah.
And so you might say, put in 10 images and none of them get in the book. But usually you got in the book if you were pretty good already. So I would just get used to being in the book. And I think this is a much cheaper alternative. I'll spend $200 here and get a page in that book. Thinking of it like that $2,000 page. But I know for a fact that I never got any work from anybody from Spectrum. And so, or maybe not. Let's say collectors would see me in there.
Well,
but it's certainly not companies.
I'm going to say, I actually first saw your work in Spectrum.
Oh, did you?
Well, I saw it. Well, no, but so I knew you. So when you contacted through Proco initially.
Oh, well, there you
Patch, I know that guy.
Well, let's rewind the tape then.
Well, so you know, to me, it seems like in our career starts out like this. Like, if you're brave enough and you're like arrogant enough, you're like, oh, of course I'm going to be the one that's chosen. You know, of course I'm going to be the guy out of these 1,000 that's going to be the chosen one for art directors or whatever. And most people aren't, right?
Yeah.
And the people who stick through that, whether they're successful or not, they eventually realize, oh, it's just a numbers game, right? If you just put yourself in enough places, you know, and your work is good enough, eventually you'll be chosen for whatever job. But it's most likely not going to be the thing that you set out for initially. Like, for people, they try to be animators and they end up as concept artists.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think part of the creative spirit is like, you know, you have no idea what you're going to be at the end of it. Whether you're starting a painting, you have no idea what the painting is going to look like. In the same way, you have no idea what your career is going to look like. You're just kind of going along and reacting to what the world is presenting to you.
Yeah.
And you have no control over, you know, what the mediums are. Now it's Instagram and talk and stuff. And, you know, 50 years ago, it was, you know, books or, you know, being in, you know, the front of the Saturday Evening Post or whatever. And
that's right. Yeah.
But it's like you're just trying to solve problems through sheer numbers and I guess just persistence, you know?
Yeah.
And then the source of persistence starts out as arrogance and then it turns into like acceptance that you're not that important to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, it's
if everyone thought that would be a better thing to get you ahead rather than I'm going to be the greatest thing in the world. But there's also a danger to I'm not that important. You might fall into that trap of thinking you're not important, which you are. You know, everyone's important. And art is incredibly important, I think. And you know, that's a fine line. Like you said a couple of words there, and if I was to use my heart monitor, my actual heart, when you said you don't know what a painting's going to turn out like, my heart filled with real joy. I was going, that's one of the greatest things. There's a blank canvas. And you know, at the end of a month or an end of a week, however big that canvas is, I mean, there's one behind you there, right? So that was a blank canvas once. And you don't know what it's going to be even you don't know, and you're going to create it.
Right.
And when you've created it, there was something that didn't exist before you put your hands on it, and now it exists forever. I mean, that's amazing. And so that makes me happy, the thought that I don't know what's going to come next. And so every time I start a drawing, I'm excited to see what it's going to be. Even though I have a broad idea what it's going to be. I'm going to be working from reference or imagination, but I've already got a spark in here, especially when I'm doing the color roughs. I love the color roughs because for me, the entire excitement of the whole creative process is done and finished in the rough.
Yep.
And then when I've got that rough, it's going to be a new excitement to get to this. But there's never anything more exciting than the color rough because you really, truly don't know what's going to come out of that.
Yeah.
Once you have it, you go, okay, and you can squint your eyes and you go, I can see that as a finished painting. It's still exciting. So you don't know how much you're going to extrapolate on that rough. And so that excited me when you said it. But when you said Instagram, my heart sank.
Yeah.
Totally sank. Because you're not autonomous anymore. You're at the whim and will of whoever runs Instagram, and they could pull the rug out of you from under your feet at any time. And for me, that is a horror show. And so we are in a world now where we've taken the art books out of the way. We don't need to spend $2,000 on an art page, but we need to promote ourselves some other way. And Instagram, I believe, was a fraud to begin with. That's me cancelled. That's my Instagram with Cali Dawn, because they said this is a platform for artists and it'll always be, right? And it'll never cost you anything. Well, it does cost you something. It costs you their whim. If they decide we don't like what you've just put up there and we're going to take away what you've built over, say, 10 years, we're going to take it away from you right now. That is not the deal that we signed up for.
Right.
Because they said this will always be free and it'll always be for you.
Yep.
And that's not true. That's an untruth right there. So when you said Instagram, my heart sank. But what do we do without it? What do we do without Instagram and Facebook? We're back in that same position I was where you walk out into the street and look at the sky and say, what next? And we can't go back to the old art books anymore. Nobody's looking at them, as far as I can see. You know, I get calls from American Illustrator or something, and they say, you know, and they bombast and say, oh, this is the way to go. We can get you a page in here. It'll cost you $2,000 US. And I go, why would I do that?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm just not going to do that.
I'm just not going to do that, you know. And they're sort of, you can almost see in their follow-up emails, their bewilderment at why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, I've done that before, and I can see that it's kind of, for me anyway, I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing it, a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
A totally pointless, and also a heart-rending exercise in waiting for something. Always waiting for something. Will this pay off? So, but it's a tricky one, Christian, because, you know, I'm in a position where I can say, be gone, you know, because I've done it and I've built up that follower
and stuff.
The career is taking care of itself. But it doesn't mean that I can slowly fade away.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. If people do, and you go, oh, is that artist still around? I thought he was dead. You know, it's just they haven't been in the public eye anymore. But, you know, it's the public eye, I think, is the problem. We are always worry what people think or whether you're good enough to show your work to. That's the problem with it. But we don't want to be nihilistic.
Well, it's complicated because I would disagree a little bit with the Instagram thing.
Please do.
Well, like in the same way that those books, they're commerce, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're selling pages to advertise to art directors. Yeah. You know, they're trying to advertise to get people's careers going, and it's a money making endeavor in the same way Instagram is. Yeah. You know, and you know, we've talked about nudity and stuff on Instagram. Yeah. How that with flags Instagram accounts,
which they said they would never flag because it's art.
Well, and I guess the problem is that they're incentivized by advertisers, and advertisers won't advertise on things that aren't suitable for, of course, 12 or younger.
And there's my rub there. That was not the deal. The deal was for artists, not advertisers.
Well, and it's you know there's always that balance between the art of it, you know, the things that you want to do and the things that are fitting for the time, right? It's like the Instagram stuff, it definitely caters to a specific kind of art, more family friendly, more friendly to advertisers.
Yeah.
And the more that you can fit into whatever style that is creatively, the more likely you're going to be pushed into the stratosphere with Instagram stuff, you know, whether it be fan art or whatever. And I think that, my view is that there's always a way of getting around whatever that thing is. And the unfortunate side of that is that it does take some amount of compromise to what you'd be doing anyways in order to get there, you know? I suspect you don't have any interest in drawing cute anime boys. And
I would rather dig a hole in the road. And and once again, there's the thing, isn't it? That's no disrespect for anyone that draws that, because I would imagine I would love to do that. If I had grown up with anime, I would have loved to do that. But it's of no interest of me. Where I'd say, once upon a time, I would have learned Captain America. I would have loved to have drawn Captain America.
Yeah.
And that would have made me happy for the rest of my life. But if you said draw Captain America now, I would go, I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So you
would rather dig a hole, right?
Yeah, I'd rather dig a hole, because it's not my creation.
Yeah.
That's not my creation. So it has to be my creation now. But once upon a time, we were talking about it yesterday, I was working for Warner Brothers, dream come true, and had to draw Foghorn Leghorn, dream come true. And it was such a grind working with that art director to get Foghorn Leghorn exactly the way Warner Brothers wanted it, that I went, this isn't art.
Yeah.
This is grid. This is me fitting this grid that can only be exactly what they want. And if it's only exactly, why don't they just draw it?
Yeah.
Because I want to draw my version of Foghorn Leghorn the way the animators did as well. There's a book there called The Nine Old Men. Yeah. They drew as they pleased. Well, they wouldn't draw as they pleased today, because they would have to be at the women call of, no, these are the parameters of the creation you made.
Yeah.
Like Fred Ward was my favorite animator. And up until Fred Ward, they drew Mickey Mouse like you see in the old rubber hose cartoons, Steamboat Willie, right? Totally different from the Mickey Mouse we see today.
Yeah.
So Fred Ward was a brilliant artist, and he was drawing better art than that. And he drew Mickey Mouse the way we see it today once in the rushes. So the rushes, if you don't know what they are, anyone watching there, is a really rough pencil version, animated, of a scene before they actually go and say, okay, maybe Happy could not fall over the bucket at this point. And so you obviously don't ink all that. It would take forever. So the rushes are that. And Disney would come in and he would go like this. He would turn the handle and watch the rushes. So watch the animation go past. And he stopped it because Mickey Mouse wasn't the Mickey Mouse that he was used to in Steamboat Willie. And apparently he was a tyrant. Walt Disney rewound the rushes and he ran it again. And some of this might be, maybe a non-truth, but it's better than the truth. And he said, who did this? Who drew this Mickey Mouse? And Fred Ward said, I did. And he says, that's how we're going to draw Mickey Mouse from now on. Right, so let's say that's a true story. It's not apocryphal, it's a true story. That's the kind of person we need to run a company that can be a collaborator with everyone. And Fred Ward changed the world by being brave enough to change Mickey Mouse into what we know today. I wasn't allowed to do that with Foghorn Leghorn yet. And he wouldn't be allowed to do that with his Mickey Mouse today.
Right.
Because it's more tyrannical. It's more, well, here's who's paying the budget. At the time, they really did draw as they pleased. The Mickey Mouse, they were inventing the wheel of animation to some new heights, right? Animation came before them with Winsor McKay and stuff, but when Disney came along, multiplane cameras didn't exist. They invented and produced that whole era. So that, long and short of it, is you'll get to a point where all the technical stuff, if that's brought back out and someone says, technically your drawing isn't correct, you'll lose your soul. And so that's going right back to the start. The technique is not the end game. The end game is the soul of it, and the technique will fit in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's like 10% of it.
It's probably less.
Yeah, for a
probably
very
less.
part.
I'd say confidence is more important than technique. Because if you're in a flow and your technique's not that great, the flow itself will connect those wonky lines to be something beautiful. Whereas if you're studiously trying to get the proportions right, guaranteed a stiff drawing. Absolutely guaranteed.
It feels like there's a propensity to try to, to compromise who you are and what you want to do to fit into whatever the new mold is. It's like when you say, when I say Instagram and your heart drops and anime boys and all that kind of stuff is popular and you'd rather dig a hole, but you're not doing that stuff because that, you want to maintain who you are. I think that's how you keep that confidence,
Yeah, I think so too.
It feels like there's a, among younger artists or people that are a bit newer, there's this desire to try to fit into a mold for whatever's popular,
Yeah, that's a mistake.
Well, and what you should be doing, and purely from a, I could be wrong, but what I think the remedy to that is just doing what you care about, and like no matter how unpopular, no matter how bad of an idea it seems, if you like it, that's enough logical reason to go and try to follow that as an impulse.
Yeah. Well, David Bowie's a good example of that. So if you don't know who David Bowie was, he was a sensational musician and singer from the 70s, probably his prime in the 70s. And he would always do exactly what he wanted to do. And even though he's considered a god of music today, at the time he didn't sell that much. And then someone else who not quite as brave, let's say someone like Depeche Mode, would bring out a single, right? And you just went, David Bowie?
Yeah.
You know, because it sounded just like him. But it wasn't him. It wasn't quite up to that standard. And they would sell 1 million copies, right? Because they just waited for David Bowie to invent the wheel, and then they would run with the wheel.
Great.
And then David Bowie would completely change everything again and come out with a new persona.
Yeah.
Like Madonna kind of did it. She always came back with something new. And he wouldn't sell that many records. And then someone else would come on. You go, is that David Bowie? And it's not. It's another new romantic group.
Right.
And they all sounded just like Gary Newman, and they sold more than he did.
Yeah.
And then he would change again, and he would do something else. Now, probably when I say Depeche Mode, most people would probably say, never heard of them, right? But more people would say, David Bowie, of course. He's a legend. So those guys went by the wayside. And they were good, by the way. They were really good. You know, of course, they still sold 1 million records, but they weren't him. Now, did they have the same satisfaction as him? Probably. They had great fame and everything. Did they have his longevity? Not at all. Right? So you'd get things like you'd get groups like the Bay City Rollers, and they'll still turn up in college, university somewhere, usually in Belfast or somewhere near where they originated from. But in the wide sense, they don't exist in anyone's consciousness at all, except for someone of a certain age. Whereas the person that does their own thing forever will always be satisfied in their work. And you don't need that much money to be happy, right? So David Bowie, in this, if you take away the scale of it all, was fabulously wealthy. But he wasn't as fabulously wealthy as the people that imitated him. You know, they went on top of the pops, and I'm trying to think of the really big, successful groups from that time. Gold, there's guys my age who'd be going, yeah, I know the one, yeah. And they were fantastically successful. But I know today that 200 years from now, there would still be people citing David Bowie and Norman Rockwell and Shelley, whereas the millions of imitators that came after them be forgotten.
You know, like ultimately, both are valid. You know,
they're both valid. Yeah.
There's no shame in like working on children's cartoons or
none at all. There's no shame in any work.
Yeah, at all. And you know, there's this hierarchy in your education sphere. Like if you work on certain movies or if you have certain projects, or if you draw in a particular style, you might be more recognized than other people, but it's ultimately sort of arbitrary and it doesn't really matter. You know, what matters most at the end of the day is how you feel about it personally.
Absolutely.
You know? And a question that I ask everybody that I mention all the time is, would you be doing the same exact thing if you had $1 billion, you know?
Oh.
And the answer, well, the purpose to that question is more so like, you know, do you still paint? Do you still draw? Do you stop painting if you have $1 billion?
Yeah.
If you stop painting, then maybe painting to you isn't that important, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe you like start making movies or whatever, but it's like trying to get an idea for what you'd be doing if external validation wasn't really a factor.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I know you had an artist on, they said they wouldn't, and I dropped dead. I said, that was a shocking thing to say from an artist. No, I wouldn't paint if I had $1 million. And I went, what the hell? Because someone said that to me years ago. It was a guy called Steve Rennell, brilliant artist. If you're watching this, Steve, it's been a wonderful being in your presence for that time we spent together. And Steve taught me tons and tons of stuff. But he said to me something once, when times were really tough, you know, you always think it's the worst of times. It's always been the worst of times. No matter where you go, it's the worst of times. We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
Christian, imagine if you were born in 1890, Spanish flu, First World War, Second World War, all in your own lifetime. You would go, this is what life is. It's just apocalyptic from start to end. And we were going through the first recession, I remember, back in the 80s. And you know, I went to work cleaning supermarkets because I didn't have any qualifications to do anything else. And everyone was selling their property and stuff to stay in the studio. They had to stay in the studio because the lure of one job in advertising could take us out of this poverty. One big campaign. And the big campaign back then would be the giant posters you see in the motorway, when you're going to the airport.
Cigarettes or Kellogg's.
Yeah, those things. If you got one of them, it was like a gambler's, view of the world. If I got one of them, that'll get me through this recession. Just one, that one campaign. And I got it. I got the campaign, and it was for the motor show in London. But by that point, by the time I got it, because like a gambler, you're risking everything on this, they still spent from 1 to 3 months to pay you. And so I had to wait 3 months to get out of this debt that I was in. And no other job came through. And eventually I had to go. I said to Steve, I can't bear this. I just can't bear this. And I don't know what else I can do. He says, well, you could try another job. And I says, what other job? He says, I don't know, anything at all. I says, I'll never be happy if I don't do this. He says, how do you know? I says, I just know. He says, you don't know that. You could go and work in a bank and be the happiest person that ever worked in a bank. I says, I don't think so. He says, you don't know. And that made me think, he's right, I don't know. It was just a quirk of fate that I picked up a pencil and went, I love this. What if I had picked up something else?
Accounting, right? Yeah.
Accounting. What if I got numbers are the most wonderful thing in the world instead of how I really see them, which is the most dreaded thing in the world, because I don't understand that. And he was right. I mean, obviously, Einstein and Stephen Hawking had amazing lives living in their heads, working with mathematics and quantum physics. And I'm only starting to really love that now, the idea of it. But I don't understand it. But I love the idea of it. And so he's right. I could have been anything as long as you got a passion for it. But for me, I after all this time, I've tried many things. And I loved being in the Navy. I thought that was fantastic. But the whole time I was in the Navy, I was haunted by the fact that years were taken away.
Yeah.
And I wasn't painting. And when I'm painting, I don't feel that. And so I know this is what I want to do. I have to do this. It's the external pressure that's the problem. It's the social media.
Yeah.
And Sarah Frazetta said it. She said she couldn't take the social media pressure anymore and took 2 months off. And she thought, what have I done? And she came back and she said, nothing had changed.
Right.
The world didn't notice.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing, went to Ireland, met you and Stan and Don in San Diego. And that was 2 months odd. I was in Los Angeles, I was in Ireland, 2-3 months away from all of this. Will I be forgotten? Came back, it didn't matter whether I was forgotten. Nobody was looking anyway.
Yeah.
They only look when you post something. And so as far as they know, you were never gone.
Yeah.
And that was a wake-up call. I went, it's not important.
Yeah.
It is not important. Man, we got to publicize ourselves. So.
Yeah. Well, that arbitrary, assignment of value and self-importance is, I think, what gets people. It's like, if I don't do this amount of head studies, or if I don't do this painting, or if I don't get into spectrum or whatever, can lead somebody down like a really dark path,
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And
I've been there.
Well, and it's like the actual external factors of paying rent and healthcare and food and all that kind of stuff are real. But after that, everything else, it doesn't really matter as much,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a giant fan of trying to keep expenses low, trying to live, in general, like below your means, because the more you let other people or you let an income or whatever control your mood, the easier it is for all of that stuff to kind of fall apart.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I've always been that anyway. I was forced into that because I had to be frugal, because I never had any money. So I had to be frugal all the time. And that frugality stayed with me. I mean, I can live on porridge. I said to you before, I'm 70% porridge. I could live on porridge. I have porridge for breakfast and I have porridge at dinner if I feel a little bit peckish.
Yeah.
A bag of porridge, that size $2. Right? You add some milk to that and you got yourself a meal, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always been like that. And I don't gamble, I don't drink. I used to. And it sounds like I'm a reformed alcoholic. I just used to and didn't again, That was just simple as that. It was just a fizzy drink. So I don't do that. So I got an art book in the post there this morning, and that just filled me with happiness.
Yeah.
That's my vice, and that is not a vice. That's just an art book. It's a wonderful thing. So it's easy for me. I don't have those vices. So, my life is pretty easy as far as an artist's life goes, because someone did a bit of research and they said 70 grand they worked out is the same as being a millionaire.
Well,
go ahead.
That was 20 years ago.
Okay, well, he updated that?
It's $220,000 or something.
That's ridiculous.
So, yeah. And in San Francisco, the poverty line is $117,000.
All right. No,
right.
See, that kind of pressure is outrageous.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a world that people were living on, even with inflation. Let's say today, I grew up with people, and I'm adding inflation to that, right?
Yeah.
Where people probably made just enough to buy bread, milk, and pay their rent. And they were happy, right? And so that was small little houses all stuck together.
Yeah.
Right? That was like an industrial town. Everyone was happy.
Yeah.
As long as they had those things. They had food, rent paid, and could go to the pub and have a drink. And they were happy with that. So today, all you would have to have for that would be 10 grand a year.
Yeah.
That's all you would need for that level of happiness.
Right.
And it was supreme happiness.
Yeah.
I remember we were coming back from a building site. My dad was a business person. I learned from him that you can be autonomous. And he would hire men, and we would all go to the building site together. And I would be the laborer, and they would be the plasterers, and we'd be a team. And he was always thinking about, because he didn't have an employer, he'd always be thinking about, okay, the next job, I'll go and price this job was one of the things he used to say, I'll go price this job. So he could never have a weekend. It was truly a weekend to him, because he'd always be thinking about the next week. And we were all in the car, and I could see it in his face. I could see him. I was in the back seat in the rearview mirror, and you could hear this cackling of laughter out the window. And we were in traffic, and I saw these businessmen walking past, and they were as grim-faced as my dad. They were just so grim, walking through this rain in their beautiful clothes. So let's say they're making $200,000 a year. They're walking past, and the laughter was coming from a bunch of women who clean the offices. And they were soaked to the skin, laughing and joking. Their lives were more fulfilled than those guys that were making a ton of money, and my dad in the front seat of that car. And I never forgot it. And because I remember saying, what's all that laughing about? That was cleaner women.
Yeah.
They had enough to eat. They had a fun night out on the weekend, and they never had to think about business.
Right.
It wasn't on their radar at all. All they know is that they whistled their way to work. And I know people that are totally happy just cleaning all day long and then have their weekend. They don't think of anything else. They're happier than people. I know they're happier than Jeff Bezos.
Well, there's a problem there, because I think there's an impulse to try to deny desire. It's like I wish I was the kind of person that could just go and, work on a farm and have that be my life and be totally happy with that.
Yeah.
Right. But the trouble there is people really can't. They can't decide what they want, like you want a certain standard of living, and you can't not want that. Right.
Yeah.
Like I love hot showers. I love hot food and stuff. And it's like at this point in my life, if I had to, go try to bathe in a river every day, I would probably be unhappier, right?
Yeah.
So I'm willing to go through a certain amount of suffering with working and all that kind of stuff and being a capitalist or whatever to have a higher standard of living. And I think that part of the trap is that people will start to guilt themselves or feel badly about their desires, and they'll try to be an entirely different person.
Yeah. That's the worst part. That's ego again. That's it.
But I don't think it's bad to want those things. I think
it's harmful.
Yeah,
but it's not bad. You're not a bad person for wanting them.
Yeah,
but it's a harmful thing because you've set yourself a task that you may not be able to fulfill, and then by not fulfilling it, you're always going to be unhappy.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't have that. Those women who were laughing, they don't have a task to fulfill other than just clean, and they do it, and so the task is fulfilled at the end of the day. Like that's a good analogy thinking about the hot and cold water shower. Like I have a shower downstairs that I just made myself. I just put a hose together. And if I go for a swim, look at me. If I go for a swim, so I've got a pool out there. Now, if I say that, and I've got friends watching from Ireland, they'll go, he's got a pool? That means he's a millionaire. Yeah. Because where I come from, that was sort of the status symbol of someone that was a millionaire. So you could have your own pool in your own garden. Here in Australia, that's just commonplace now. You work hard and you can have a pool. If you're a builder, anybody can have a pool if they work every day of their lives and work hard. And so the shower downstairs isn't hot.
Yeah.
So I have to endure after a swim, this cold shower. But you know what? After it, you feel like $1 million. You go, whoa, whoa. And a warm shower, you wouldn't have got that thrill. of that cold shower. So the cold shower wakes you up. And as a sort of metaphorical idea there, the warm shower kind of, it sort of dulls your senses a little bit. Yeah. You're so comfortable that even the slightest bit of, you're adjusting it. It's gone too hot. It's gone too cold. When you just turn that cold on and you're living, you go, whoa.
Yeah.
And within a few seconds, you get adjusted to that cold and it's really fresh. And you never have to adjust it. Your body has already done that for you.
Right.
Your natural body has adjusted your temperature to fit. So you never doing all that. So that's the problem with getting too comfortable, I think, is that you actually lose the will, I think, to be adventurous. I think it's that you get so comfortable you don't want to stray outside that comfort zone. Now there's the common phrase, the comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, it's complicated too, because I think it's, again, it's natural to want to have those things.
Yeah.
And then,
they're wonderful.
Well, in general, like going on an adventure, I think is in general like a mindset versus, a thing that you choose. Like I'm in Australia, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm paying around, we're eating, hamburgers. We went to McDonald's yesterday and stuff. And I could have done that in the United States. Done. And it's totally fine.
And then I was trying to push you out. Let's go camping.
And it's like, I'm in Australia right now, and, geographically, I have all these amazing adventures open to me in a way that they wouldn't be open to me in California, obviously, because it's different geography. But, you can go and travel 3,000 miles across the world and have the same life where, just outside your door, we've never walked to Adelaide before, right?
Yeah.
And that's open to us right now. We can start walking, figure it out along the way.
Yeah. To be brutal.
Yeah. But, there's a chance we just wouldn't finish and give up, but it would be an adventure, right?
It would be an adventure.
But that's open to us with zero money as is right now.
Oh, that's right.
And it's just our ability to go and see that as as a thing that we can do and that we want to do,
And you tend to do that in the early days. When I first came here, I saw more of Australia than I've seen in the next 20 years after.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to see it all. Go up to Cairns, go down to Canberra, down to Sydney. I did all that in practically 1 or 2 years. And then you get more and more comfortable and you go, oh yeah, it's kind of like here. It's a little different. It's a big city. Oh, you think you've seen one city, you've seen them all. And in a way you have, because like you say, you go to McDonald's. Oh, there's McDonald's,
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more homogenized everywhere you go. You'll go down a road and you'll see McDonald's and you'll see Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then it'll just repeat itself over and over.
Yeah.
So the world's less interesting anyway. Once upon a time, even when I came here, once upon a time, we went to Coles Supermarket the other day.
Yeah.
That used to be a little fruit and veg shop, a little bike shop where you could get repaired bikes, right? So it had a real old world quality to it that reminded me of being a kid. And I used to enjoy going there, and it had a newsagents. So all of that existed, and then it was just bulldozed by Coles Supermarket, and now it's just Coles Supermarket.
Yeah.
And all of that wonder's gone. So you just go there now. As a utilitarian idea, you go there to get things that you need. Yeah. And you don't enjoy any of it, really. I mean, you might. I like the colors of the fruit. This is nice. I like being with you. Oh, Christian's here. This is great. Yeah. Isn't it exciting? Christian's showing me stuff that's in America or not in America. So now it has a new excitement to it.
Yeah.
But it'll never bring back that... if you were a kid, the wonder of taking your bike down to be repaired in that little shop and pick up a newspaper for your dad and take it home.
There's a level of incredible amazement, like amazing things that are happening even at that supermarket. Like, you can go buy a mango, right?
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's incredible, right? And
unbelievable.
And it's like there's a billion things like that just in that supermarket. You can go and buy meat, ice cream, candy, vegetables, chicken, whatever, right? And it's like, it's just your ability or anyone's ability to see that as something that you should be grateful for.
Yeah.
And I think that, going back to those businessmen and all that kind of stuff, like I think we lose sight very quickly of what, like the amazing, incredible things happening around us all the time, very quickly,
it's become so easy for it suddenly to become normalized, and you might pick a mango up and it's a bit bruised and you go, I'm not having that.
Yeah. Right.
That has been transported from Indonesia, say, on a boat. Yeah. And people had to haul it up steps. I used to do it in the Navy, haul the food up steps. Yeah. And had to get that to your door through truck drivers and people and, going through, storms and stuff. You go, oh, it's got a bruise on it.
Yeah.
I want my money back.
Yeah.
So you go, who are you now? Who is this person that has become so desensitized to the amazement of this mango in your hand? And I don't want to be that person. But at the same time, the evil of Coles crushing that little world that used to exist there. And, I've got the cognitive dissonance where I walk into Coles and go, oh, mango. It used to be a bike shop here.
I was talking to Ben about this, Ben Eblin, and we were talking about how from a young age, like high school is you remember that 4 year, I don't know what your high school was like, but I remember my high school very vividly. And
it's in the hippocampus, yeah. You can't get rid of it forever.
Yeah. Mrs. Mullen's 8th grade class or something.
Never forget.
Being in Mr. Holsey's AP.
What about that French teacher that used to wiggle her ass when she was writing on the board? Clip that out. But when you're a kid, that is never going to leave you. That it's never going to leave who you were.
The thing is, if I were to go visit that high school, it'd be a completely different place. When to me, it is like a thing that's burned into my brain as being some of the most formative years of my life, right?
Yeah.
And in the good and bad ways, right?
And it seemed to last forever, didn't it?
Well, and it's different now. It's a different place entirely, And that's the world, it feels like. You start and you move through it, and it is this subjective thing, and then it doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
It's this incredibly important thing to you, and then it's just not there, right?
That's right. And it's gone. It's gone.
In the same way that where I'm in Australia right now, and we're having this reporting and it's going to be memorable, but in 100 years, it's the only thing left over might be the reporting or whatever else.
Or this house, maybe. Yeah, you're well built, these houses. You asked me how old this was, 100 years almost.
Yeah.
And it's made of wood.
Years. Yeah. Right.
Boy, they built stuff back then.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that subjective internal meaning that we assign to things. That's all there really is. It's like that, that ability to look at, and I'm saying this purely just, I guess, observational, the ability to look at Coles as this corporate destruction of an authentic part of Australia versus it being an amazing place where you can get mangoes.
Yeah.
It's both things.
Yeah. And one day that might look like an antiquated idea, Coles.
Yes.
Right? You might go, still walk down to the shop.
They were teleported. Yeah, they were teleported to him, food. Yeah, food. I get my energy through the sun.
Or just hydrated.
Yeah.
Sun, little patch. Oh,
yeah.
Mango patch.
And I think as artists or people, that there's this idea or this impulse to try to assign arbitrary value and meaning to things that, that don't really exist in some sense. It's like a painting might, Frazetta and all that kind of stuff has made a huge influence on you.
Huge, yeah.
And, it was just to some art director, it was just one thing on the list of projects to try and complete to make their quotas.
I saw a sketch by Fred Frazetta, and the art director had written with ballpoint pen a correction.
Yeah.
I thought, who would write with a ballpoint pen on a Frank Frazetta sketch?
Right.
They're worth $5,000 today, those sketches. And it wasn't the monetary thing that made me shirk. It was the fact that he had the cheek to write with an indelible ink on his drawing. Yeah. How little he thought of that drawing. It was just something he would probably even just throw in the bin like that.
Well, in the same way, you might have corrected a student that felt the same about their own drawing, right? Yeah.
I've had that.
Right. And it's tricky, right? Because we look at I have a Dean Cornwell sketch that's all crumpled up.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I bought it for $100 at Comic-Con.
Oh yeah.
And, it was just a one-off thing for him, but now it's this really meaningful thing.
That's right. And the sketches I throw in the bin.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He didn't. Dean Cornwell didn't think that was anyone living on treasure.
I have that drawing he did at Watts framed up in my room.
Actually,
yeah. So yeah. Well, yeah, but and there's this
No, that means something to me.
Well, it's meaningful to me because it's it was from your time visiting, California and there's history behind it.
Well, it's meaningful to me that you put it in the frame.
Yeah. Right now.
That's better than me throwing it over my shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that impulse, and I think that's all there really is. In some sense, I think it's a bad idea to listen to only those impulses because you only have your worldview where most people realistically don't care about Frank Frazetta.
Yeah.
But we do for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But if you were to deny those feelings, that's almost like denying who you are as a person.
Yeah. It is that hippocampus thing again, isn't it? Because I remember the first time I saw Frank Frazetta painting, and that was that Egyptian Queen. I'm just staring at it, While the world walk past, I'm staring at this thing. And no one else can see it. That's, to me, that's astonishing. That's a kind of magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why does this mean so much to me when people are just walking past?
Yeah.
And it's not even the Frank Frazetta. It's a 4-color dot paint, reprint on a magazine, on a bookshelf in a shop. But, the essence of it's there.
Yeah.
And if you get a good enough repro of it, I got these, they've never been bettered, actually. These ones from Ellie Frazetta, I bought that off Ellie Frazetta up there. Yeah. And they were so close to the original paintings. But you still, nothing on the original paintings. And I keep these blinds closed, so I don't want the Australian sun to dim those prints. They're still ink, they're still going to go.
Yeah.
You can see that little Frank Frazetta over there where he's on the horse. Do you see the tiny little one?
Yeah.
That's already faded.
Right.
They had such beautiful golden colors. So no matter what, the only thing that's going to really stand the test of time is the original artwork.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so valuable. Just this one thing. And it's exactly what the artist did. It's not a facsimile. It's exactly it.
Yeah.
And when you see it, you get that whole thrill back. When I stood in front of the Egyptian queen 25 years later after being in that bookstore, and there was the real thing in Frank Frazetta's museum, and just staring at it, all came back again and was quadrupled. Yeah. I thought I could never get that thrill back again, but there it was, And the amount of times I set the alarm off, when you get this close to the painting, the alarm goes off, and out comes Ellie, and she had a real bedlax, it's coming out. Sorry about that, Sarah, but Sarah knows, that she was staring. She was a staring woman when it came to the art business. And she came and she said, you can't be that close to the paint. I said, sorry, I was just trying to see up close, And even after she reprimanded me,
I still did it. Yeah. Yes. You almost had no say over how that painting grabbed you,
Yeah, I couldn't. My nose was in a world of its own.
Yeah, you had no free will in that sense.
No,
like you had no choice whether it was, that day or a week later or 6 months earlier or whatever. That was going to grasp you, right?
And imagine if that magazine had been bought before I walked into that store. What would my world be now?
Right.
What would the difference be?
They might have not changed.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to like free will and all that kind of stuff, there's so many different things that are getting in the way of who we are, and a lot of it is arbitrary and random. And the only reason Frank Frazetta grabbed you at that time is because he was the guy that was playing the numbers game. He was, friendly with the art directors. He was friendly with those people that he just put himself in that thing. But it could have been anybody, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. It wasn't just one bullet. It was a couple of bullets.
Yeah.
Because I bought a magazine. It was my uncle. I didn't have the money for it. Right? So there's where money does play a part. I didn't have 50 pence. Now, 50 pence was a big... when you're a kid, things make an impression. Like, when you were a kid, I don't know, maybe... Let's say you got pocket money when you were a kid, and it was a certain amount of money, and you never had any more money than that. That was your big money for the week, right? This was a big coin, 50 pence. So, I don't know, it depends who you are. Everyone's different. But let's say you're a kid and you've never had $1. Now you've got $1. And that's a huge thing. Or maybe you're a different kid and you've always had $1 and you get a $50 note.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, I've never held a $50 note before. That's what it was like with my Uncle Jim. He says, here's 50 pence.
Yeah.
Go and buy that Conan comic, magazine down the street. Because before that, I only had, swapped copies. They were all deteriorated.
Yeah.
And I went down to the store, and there it was, this Conan comic. Conan number 4 it was. A Savage Sword of Conan. It was 50 pence. Outrageous amount of money. On the cover it said $1 American. And so there you go. $1 was exactly double 50 pence. And the woman wouldn't sell it to me.
Yeah.
She went, so, it was a Catholic neighborhood. She went, I don't know, this kid's trying to buy that magazine. It's because the woman on the front was basically wearing a bikini.
Yeah.
She had breastplates. There's nothing untoward at all.
Yeah.
Ireland, a glimpse of stocking was seen as something shocking. And she wouldn't sell it to me. And the other woman says, it's just a comic book. She flipped through it. It's just comics. Yeah, it's just the cover. Yeah, anyway, I nearly didn't get the book. So I brought it back up to my Uncle Jim. I mean, look at that. She wouldn't have sold me that.
Yeah.
That's the Moon Maiden, Frank Frazetta. She wouldn't have sold that to me. So that woman nearly curtailed my career as well.
Yeah.
Because when I opened that comic book, it was the best, and still is, the best comic book, I believe, of all time. And I'm looking for it because I have the actual comic book. That one.
Okay. Yeah.
The actual one.
Yeah. Great.
I have it here somewhere.
Yeah.
It should be there. Anyway, we'll dig it off there. Photograph it if you want. but it's not got the cover on it anymore because the cover fell off, and I took it to Boris Vallejo's house and he signed it for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And he didn't even have to ask. He said, he saw what it was.
Yeah.
It was obviously, right, I'd had it forever, and he signed it.
Yeah.
And so that was the comic book, because inside there it said cover art by Boris Vallejo.
Yeah.
And I went, somebody painted that. It's not a museum repo.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a living artist today.
Yeah, somebody, yes.
And I saw the date on it and everything. He's alive.
Yeah.
This guy lives today.
Yeah. Right.
I was astonished. I thought this is a career.
Yeah.
And that's what, more than Frank Frazetta's Egyptian Queen, was the reason why I went, I can be this. Because with Frank Frazetta, I was just mesmerized. I just went, wow, look at that. I love that. But this one, I can be this.
Yeah.
I can do exactly that. And that's when I found that Frank Frazetta also did covers as well for Warren books. So I was really lucky. I was really lucky to find those little magazines. Oh, we'll be back. Look, I just broke Christian's clip.
Oh, yeah.
Really
Fine. It's okay.
But it's not okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, it's on camera.
So we're back. It kind of spoiled the whole mood, didn't it, Chris?
No, it's okay.
Killed the whole thing.
Totally fine.
So here's that magazine cover.
Yeah.
There it is there. Here's what outraged the woman in this little sweet shop. That girl in the corner. To Patrick from Boris.
Yeah.
There you go.
Going back to the subjective nature of all this stuff is, I in general couldn't give two shits about a lot of old 70s comic art. I just don't care. I admire it for its technical skill, but it's not that
I
important.
didn't see that coming.
Well, for people, for a lot of people, it's had this huge impact on their lives. Like I was visiting Walt and Weezy Simonson in New York, and Walt worked on a bunch of the original Thor comics, and Weezy had created like Cable and a bunch of big comic characters, and they had worked with Frank in the studio.
Wow.
And Kirby and all those guys, and they kind of came up with them, and they had a bunch of his original artwork on the walls, and like Cornwell and all that stuff, and it was meaningful to me, but it's not what I would probably decorate my house with.
Yes.
I can understand that in some of your art up, or some of my other friends, and I think it's like the like most important things to other people are often not that important to you, especially when it comes to art,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at a book now, and I bought it. I'll just get it there. I can see it in the corner. And I bought this, and I haven't looked at this book. Since I bought it.
Yeah.
And so the first day I bought it, I looked at it, and I went, wow, this is really great. This is really excellent. I never looked at it again because it didn't have that nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
But you probably know these artists more than I do.
Is it?
Or maybe not, I don't know. 52 covers
from
J.G. Jones.
Oh yeah, I know Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know these guys.
No, I know him personally.
Yeah.
Like I'm helping him with his YouTube channel.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, well, isn't that amazing? Yeah. Now, if I saw this today, let's say I'm 10 years old and I looked at this, I'd go, wow, the Beastie came to dinner. This is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it would stick with me forever. Look at those thumbnails. That's how you do it. It would stick with me forever. But I'm not 10 years old.
Yeah.
And so I'm admiring this for its quality and how brilliant the artist is and everything. But I won't come back to that over and over the way I do with Frank Frazetta, because it doesn't hit me every time. Oh, that's when. And This is the first time I saw that. And, I was 13.
Yeah.
It doesn't hit me like that. It just goes, this is another contemporary or maybe another artist that's working in the same field as me. Yeah. That's what it has. And I can see how great it is, but it doesn't have that nostalgia.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's digital as well. So, this is something new to me still, digital.
Yeah.
Where it's less organic. Obviously, everybody knows that. And the big struggle is to make digital look organic.
Yeah.
And it's the eternal struggle, isn't it? Whereas it's just immediately you pick up a paintbrush, it's organic. So it's the organic nature that's missing for me there on that.
Right. Well, and like when it comes to like people trying to find their own style or, the reason to do art, I think it's like trying to pay attention to what those feelings are. So like you can go and admire an artist and love their work, but the thing that kind of gets you up out of bed in the morning, that the images that you look at every day, I think are more the things that will kind of point you in that direction than really anything else. And
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I look at all around this room, it's all Frank Frazetta paintings. And there's a big Boris up there, another beautiful inscription from Boris on that for me. Do you see that with the old ink? I mean, that really means a lot to me. And for me, for years, that I show painting is called The Vampire's Kiss, was the benchmark of art for me. I went, if I can ever get to that quality. I mean, who could? When I first saw that, I thought, that's impossible. That's impossible. That's Frank Frazetta on steroids. How could anyone be that good today, right? Rembrandt's long dead, and there's a modern artist, right? But from there, I went on and started to discover Victorian artists. Look at this one by Herbert Draper.
Yeah.
And there's a great example, Herbert Draper. Herbert Draper's totally forgotten by most of the world. And that painting to me is the height of Victorian classical art. Classical romanticism, it was called. That's the height of it. The Lament for Icarus. And yet, there's another artist called Frederick Leighton. There he is there, Lord Frederick Leighton.
Yeah.
Was made the president of the Royal Academy. And when he died, he had a funeral procession that you would see for a queen, where they walked on the Strand with horse carriage and armed guards.
Yeah.
And it was in the front page of the Times. That was an artist. You'll never see that again. An artist died today. Here's the royal procession all the way down to the National Gallery. When Herbert Draper died, it was a little box column like you would get for any death. It says, artist died today by Herbert Draper. So what does that tell you? That one painting there has more of an effect on me than that entire oeuvre from Lord Leighton. And I love Lord Leighton. I absolutely love him. So you're right. At the end of the day, it's just coloured marks on a surface.
Yeah.
Why does it mean so much to it is probably a big question. Why does that mean so much to us?
Yeah. Well, for the individual that's trying to paint pictures, that for someone that's like, because most people aren't famous, I'm not famous and it's like all this stuff. It's like, how do you find the purpose?
I think you might be a little famous.
I'm a tiny bit, a very, very tiny bit. Because
I know people that don't know you and know you. So that's, isn't that what fame is?
A little bit, I guess.
I've never met him, but I know him.
Yeah.
I think that's fame, isn't it?
A tiny bit.
What is fame?
I don't know.
I think it's that.
Yeah. Fame is like, the public knows about you,
Yeah.
And I don't think.
But how much public this has got to be before it's fame? Can it be one person?
One person. I would say if you Tom Cruise is famous.
He's famous, yes. We all can say Tom Cruise and you know who he is. That's maybe that's a different level of fame.
Yeah.
It's maybe a new name for fame, isn't it?
Right.
It's like ultra famous or something, isn't it?
Well, there's that impulse to to have that again, that hierarchy. But with all this stuff, it's like it is very easy to look at the way you're spending your time is it's just marks on a canvas. You're just putting oil on linen or something, or it's going to be a magazine cover, or it's going to be a textbook illustration or something, and it's very easy to break it down to its bare fundamental things and be like, oh, this is unimportant, which I in a lot of ways to me, that's the death of art, the death of expression is to try to break down the thing that's actually like you're spending your life doing that, spend an hour a week or whatever, a part of your life doing this thing to not see it as important, I think is, it is 100% detrimental to the creative.
Of course, sure. Well, think about this, for instance. Let's think about, is it up here? Let's see the Destroyer. See the Destroyer over there?
Yeah.
That sold, I think, anyway, for $2 million. Yeah. That was an illustration for a book that would have paid $50 when it was commissioned.
Yeah.
Well, that Herbert Draper there is absolutely massive when they bring it out. They put it in storage most of the time. You'd be very lucky to go into the Tate Gallery and see that because they've got so many artworks, they usually put them in storage and then revolve the thing around. They'll always have John Singer Sargent's Lady Macbeth putting the crown on her head.
Yeah.
They'll always have that. And if you're lucky enough to walk into the gallery that day when they've revolved the paintings, you'll look across from Lady Macbeth and you'll see the Lament for Icarus.
Yeah.
I think that's only worth less than $1 million, that painting.
Right.
I think some paintings from the Victoria era can't be sold because nobody wants them.
Yeah.
And they sold the Procession of Moses, I'm not sure the full title of it, by Alma Tadema. They sold that recently for £30 million. But it was discarded in an alleyway because someone bought it in a gallery shop in London.
For the frame.
Yeah,
right.
And threw it in the alleyway.
Yeah.
And someone brought the painting into the gallery and said, this painting's been in the alleyway, and the guy had it. He couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So when the guy bought, he thought, oh, finally I've sold that thing I couldn't sell. It was too big for the shop.
Yeah.
And it came back to him to haunt him.
Yeah.
And the guy from Candid Camera bought it in America. He bought it and then sold the whole collection for practically nothing. And now it's worth 30 million.
Right.
So it's not worth anything until someone pays for it. But the thing is, that illustration, which is often thought of as disposable art, this was the disposable art.
Yeah.
You know, the Alma Tadema, and that because I think Kirk Hammond from Metallica, just like me, was, because we were all about that same age, looked at that painting on a paper.
And he loved it.
And he loved it so much that when he became a millionaire, he went, I'm going to buy that.
Yeah.
And he bought it for that price.
He might have bought it for more than it might have been worth because he wanted to, support whatever, right? And
it's possible, but by that time Frank was dead, so it might not have been that.
Yeah. Well, for George Lucas as well, and Spielberg, they're buying all these paintings and stuff, and and for Leyendecker, the famous story is they would sell the paintings for $5, and then they would rip it. They'd rip a two-figure down the middle to make it two paintings instead of one. Right?
Well, that's what Frazetta was doing. Yeah. Recently, when he started becoming really, when these prices started coming out, they were starting to sell strips of Frank Frazetta stuff.
Yeah.
From a part of an artwork that had already been cut up by him for a boot jacket. You can get it by a strip here and go, it's kind of abstract, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. It's the end of that other painting that I once saw set in Africa. It's just a strip. It's getting ridiculous like that now.
Yeah.
But once upon a time, Frank Frazetta got a scalpel and went, that's too big for that frame. And threw it to the side to fit a frame. Maybe something he bought in Home Depot. It doesn't fit this frame.
Like the commerce of it is like, you're in general, like the people who are painting these paintings are even thinking about that, their paintings being worth $1 million, $2 million, $10 million later on. It's just the act of creating. And that's the intuitive, just letting themselves kind of explore and just create the artwork.
Yeah.
And then the reception is something you almost can't control,
Yeah.
And for Frazetta, like, if you fast forward his career, like to now, I don't think he'd have nearly the same amount of success he had.
You don't think so?
I don't think so, no.
Why do you think it would be different?
I would say the subject matter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
How strange is it that we've become more puritanical as we became more enlightened?
Yeah.
It seems bizarre to me that you would reverse that back. I can understand some with the male gaze and everything. I'm not unaware of that. I'm not stupid. But we were talking the other day about blowback from the gluteus that I drew on the Proco channel, and people saying this is the male gaze. Well, do we never draw the gluteus then? Do we never draw it? Because it's the male gaze. Because whereas the male gaze is always going to be here now. It's crazy. But the reason I drew the gluteus, like we were talking, is that there's no other part of the body where you can see the occlusion shadow, the drop shadow, and the form shadow in one simple place.
Yeah. That
you can truly understand how 3 dimensions work with charcoal. And I pointed out the arm, crease here is the occlusion shadow, the form shadow becomes this knobbly thing because you got a tricep, a bicep, and a brachialis. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
Gluteus, simple. And also it has gravity and you can see crease. There's nothing that'll teach you about the human body as simply as the gluteus. And it makes me want to scream when I see blowback from that. Why does it have to be this? And even, why don't we do the male gluteus? Well, yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah.
But it's not going to show you the gesture that you're going to get from those hips.
Frazetta also painted a ton of male gluteus as well.
He did tons of male gluteus. And, it's almost like if I'm going to paint the male gluteus, the female gluteus, I have to do a male right beside it. This is show that it's not the male gaze, But when do they stand next to each other? It's really weird. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look there. There it is there, the moon maid.
Yeah.
So there's nothing there right above it. Like I say, there's the male gluteus above it. But look how feminine the male gluteus is on that. Do you see that? He cannot get enough gesture in that to the point where he has to androgynize it to get any flow. And so that's the whole thing, gesture and flow and structure. At the end of the day, there's nothing like the female gluteus to show all of those things in one hit and make all of art, all the figure understandable. It almost sounds like I'm apologizing for that. I'm not apologizing for anything, but I'm basically there's the voice I have when I hear those comments. I go, this is really important for art. This is an incredibly important piece of anatomy. Yeah. And I call it the fulcrum of the body because there it is everything works off of that.
Yep.
We bend from that position, we compress, we sit on this thing. It's all there.
Right.
It does sound like I'm rapidly trying to dig my way out of some hole, but it's not at all. That is, if we do it, we'll draw them again.
Yeah.
Unashamedly. And explain why it's so important.
Well, it's complicated because, every artist, it's very easy to critique them. I think that, it's very easy to look at Frazetta's stuff and be like, that's misogynistic.
Yes.
Whatever.
And it happens all the time.
When I agree somewhat with those points there, in the same way that, like, if you look at John Singer Sargent, he painted the upper class of England, you know, in America.
And some would bored the life out of me.
Well, and it's like the people would, like, look at the subject, they look at the subject matter, like, I hate this, but then they look at the brushstrokes and all that. That's what it's about. And but I think sometimes it's easy to critique Sargent because it's like, oh, you're looking past, all of these things that these people did in order to, just look at the paintings. You're hyper obsessing about all these things. And for every single thing, for Disney, they're painting or they're doing these wholesome stories of, love and acceptance and all that kind of stuff. And the hypocritical side of that is Disney is a corporation that sues people to death, And,
monstrous,
and they claim ownership over their art.
And they broke unions. You don't know this stuff when you're a kid. You just go, Mickey Mouse is wonderful.
Well, and every single side of art has a dark side, I think that, with Frazetta or Sargent or Disney or whoever else, I think they're, it's very easy to, again, going down the nihilistic side to break down, like...
No, we weren't going to do that, Christian.
Well, no, but
we'll just salt it. We'll salt it in.
Well, I'm saying it as a cautionary tale, is that every single thing could be broken down as, like,
for sure,
it's bad, right?
You can switch anything into the dark side, anything at all, if you've got a bent to do that.
Well, and part of the reason I admire Frazetta is because it's so simple, It's like the compositions are very, like, here's a guy on a rock, or here's a guy fighting, a monster or something. And it doesn't have to be much more complicated than this was just a magazine cover. It doesn't, like a lot of older fine art has a lot of symbolic meaning to it that I think, they're trying to incorporate too much, or they're trying to make it too meaningful or something, Yeah,
you can, when you see the mechanics turn, when you can actually see the cogs turn in, I think the artist has failed somewhat.
Yeah.
That should be something we discover.
Yeah, and you kind of understand on, like, a subconscious level.
Yeah. I mean, some art's just screaming at you, this is a message.
Yeah.
And that can be important too if it's a political thing. If you're trying to change the world through politics, then it has to be a simple, those propaganda posters the Nazis did during the war were very successful. But then they were just really bold.
Yeah.
You can see how that, say, how did that ever happen? Did you ever see a propaganda poster from that era? They're amazing.
Effective, right?
Effective, yeah. And the Triumph of the Spirit, that movie, that woman just couldn't forget. She was haunted by it for the rest of her life. She was a job in person, and here was this big corporation says to make this movie. Can't forgive her for it.
Yeah.
But she made an incredible movie.
Right.
Triumph of this. Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't.
It's astonishing. It's the most beautiful looking thing. And it's the most evil thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. Right. Well, and if for everything, like all art, all expression has a dark side to it. And going back to Norman Rockwell, like, he was painting these idyllic scenes, and he wasn't the guy that
wasn't ideal.
That would be in those paintings. Well, often I think it's easy to look at your own art where you're doing figure drawing, and it's very easy to break that down as, like, oh, I'm just studying, or it's not meaningful, or anything.
Yeah.
I think often the meaning is what you kind of assign it to be.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's meaningful if it's meaningful to you.
Yeah.
And no matter what it is. And, people can say, like Norman Lindsay, for instance, an Australian artist I never heard of, for instance. We're talking about what's fame?
Yeah.
I've never heard of Norman Lindsay, and I came to Australia. Astonishing artist. I mean, really wonderful. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Australian and I have to pick an artist. Brilliant artist. And if you look into Norman Lindsay, it'll lead you right to Frazetta.
Yeah.
And through Roy Crinkle. Because Roy Crinkle was a great aficionado of art. He'd go and steal books. He'd go to the bookstore in New York, and he'd steal 2 books.
Yeah.
He'd steal one for himself to read and a copy to keep pristine.
Yeah.
And he stole them both. Right?
Yeah.
So this is a guy with no money at all. And that, as far as I can read, lived a wonderfully creative and happy life in poverty.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be a Frazetta.
Yeah. Because
he introduced him to Norman Lindsay.
Right.
And if you look at Frank Frazetta's paintings, you just see Norman Lindsay all the way through them.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. And I thought, Frank Frazetta, he's totally unique. Look at him.
Yeah.
I see Norman Lindsay everywhere now.
Yeah.
And so there's that Australian artist. I didn't know about it. And Frank Frazetta reverse engineered me back to that guy, Norman Lindsay. And he was just demonized through his entire life, just totally beat over the head by the Puritans in this country for drawing these what they consider satanic artworks. Were just, when you look at them today, they're actually quite innocent looking. Can't remember the name for the Beboppers or something. They had this particular unit that would track down anyone that's doing nefarious stuff. And they got him onto the cosh here in Australia. But see got Norman Lindsay. If you haven't seen him, it's just amazing art.
Rockwell, it was Leyendecker, and with Leyendecker.
That's right, and Cornwall as well.
Yeah. Well, the other side of this is that a lot of personal style and development starts out from trying to emulate other people. Trying to ape other people. And it's like all the famous comic artists, they're trying to be someone else, and all the famous concept artists they're trying to ape.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. I think it's okay because we all do it. I think, like, I've written a book recently called The Power of Osmosis.
Yeah.
And it's not a new idea. You copy a master and then you imbibe some of what they have. But the main thing is you don't become them, you become yourself. And these are things that you switch now. You alter it. You say, I like Roy Crinkle, for instance. Frank Frazetta said that his women look like they would crush you.
Yeah.
So Roy Crinkle had a penchant for really largesse women. And they were wonderful. They're really brilliant. There's books here somewhere. And Frank Frazetta would never draw a woman like that.
Yeah.
But he would draw a particular kind of woman. Look, that woman's 5'6". If she could never be any taller than 5'6". Let's say his women were about 5'4".
Yeah.
Just what women were back then, 5'4", 5'2", was what a woman in his era would be. We were in the supermarket the other day, and I said, look how tall Australian women are. Or 6-footers. What? There was a 6-footer! It was like that. In Frank's day, that's what he was influenced by. So he would draw these idealized woman in the street in fantasy settings. Now, just take that idea, the woman in the street in fantasy settings. That's totally unique, right? If you think about everyone's drawn Amazonian people 8, 9, 10 heads high. He didn't. And so his work had this Frazetta look to it, which was so real. And I think that's why it really strikes me. I could believe this world that he's in here. I know these people. Like those 2 harpies up there. They remind me of people I knew that were the women I were frightened of,
Yeah, right.
And so they're real to me. I can put a real person in that world. Whereas Roy Crinkle's women were very strange.
Yeah.
But it was Roy Crinkle. Now there's a style. So just switch something a little bit. If you were to copy Roy Crinkle, you just look like a copy of Roy Crinkle.
Yeah.
You'd have to love something that you love and put that into the art.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Even if it's anime boys.
An anime voice. Yeah, you could do that.
Hey.
You could definitely do that. You could do anything. Steve Houston talks about it all the time, using the Harry Potter idea. A kid goes to school, but what if it's a wizard school?
Yeah.
Just took 2 little genres and put them together that hasn't been done before, and you've got something new.
Right.
Because nothing's unique, You can go back to cave person's days, and I bet they were telling the same stories. Maybe magic wasn't around yet.
Yeah.
I guess when they see a tree fell by a thunderbolt, there's magic. They go, it's magic. This thing in the sky, the sun that comes up every day, there's magic, and then it disappears again. You're probably scared for a few days. Is it ever going to come back? So I think you got to infuse at least some wonder into your art. Whatever that is, it doesn't have to be magical in that sense, but some wonder, whatever that is.
Yeah. Sick. Okay, cool. Do you want to wrap it up now? It seems like the battery's about to die.
Is it? Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you doing this, Patrick.
That's Christian.
How should people follow you on the internet?
pjartworks.com.
Cool.
Everything's in there. That's dead simple.
Thanks, Christian. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Are we doing a handshake?
That's this pump? Yeah.
Do some graphics on it.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks, Christian. I'll try and fix this now.